Year 2 of the Michael Winger and Will Dawkins Oklahoma City Wizards rebuild. It's getting interesting. I pulled up, so our picks are weird because of like the circumstances that were there before. But one thing I want to say is my coworker's Michael Scotto, and it was funny on draft night. It was just here. I got like Michael Winger's like reaction. I just saw what like we texted him, so it was just funny. But either way, in the upcoming draft, we only have the 2025 pick, like in the second round. So we get our first round back in 2026, and we also have the Phoenix Suns swap. We have our own in 2027, our own in 2028, and we have the right to swap one. We also have the Portland Trail Blazers and our own pick in 2029. We have the Warriors protected pick in 2030, our pick, and then the swap with the Suns, and then we have our own pick in 31. And in this year, our pick is protected top 10, so it's in our best interest. So if we get a top 10 pick, we keep it and it doesn't convey to the New York Knicks. So just to know that. Now, next up, what did we do this offseason? We brought in Saddiq Bey on a 3-year, $30 million deal. I thought that was a great deal, in my opinion. I think Saddiq Bey at this point, when you're looking at a guy like that, you have a guy who, if you look at his best season, he was actually a guy that I think was actually developing well and then stagnated, and then he started to like figure it out last year, and then he tore his ACL. But in, what was it, year 2? Yeah, he shot just under 40% from the field, but he shot 35% from 3, 5.5 rebounds, 3 assists, like a steal, a block a night, 16 points a night in 33 minutes. I've always thought Saddiq Bey coming out of Villanova, I mean, at this point, I'm just surprised he just didn't end up on the New York Knicks. Seemingly, they love everyone who comes out of Nova. But I just thought Saddiq Bey was a guy that coming out of college, he was going to figure it out. He was the type of guy who he's got good size and length for the wing. He's got multiple skills. He's got a good jumper. He can kind of, be like a guy who can kickstart a fast break, and he can guard 1 through 3, maybe even 1 through 4. He's got like a 220 frame. And he seemingly seems to be a hard worker that people like. So I really like that one. We bring back Anthony Gill on a minimum 2-year deal, which means the NBA subsidizes that contract. We don't pay anything. It's nothing against the cap. We bring back Richaun Holmes because we just needed to spend money. So we basically give him a fat 1-year deal with no money next year to make it easy to trade. Now we got to talk about why Deni Avdija got traded. No other time are you going to get a first round pick unprotected, and then another player for Deni Avdija. Now, the whole thing there is, the other thing is you also have a pick swap with the Portland Trail Blazers in one of those years. I might be wrong, but yeah, I am wrong. Either way, you do have some second rounders, and the whole thing for me is when I look at this situation is Deni Avdija was at his peak value, and I love Deni Avdija. I'm so happy Deni Avdija figured it out, and he's, I actually met him in Las Vegas, and he's going to be a guy that's going to have a great time in Portland in terms of individual success. But the fact that we got a second round pick and a first round pick unprotected for Deni Avdija, and then if Malcolm Brogdon plays well and somebody actually wants him, and he doesn't just sit on a roster, I think because he's an expiring, people might want him a bit more. But Malcolm Brogdon, last year on a bad team, he only played 39 games, 16 points, 44% from the field, 41% from 3. Past 2 seasons, he's been above 40%. And I just think there's going to be somebody out there that's going to give him a second round pick. So potentially, you could walk away with multiple picks. You could even, if somebody really wants Malcolm Brogdon and somebody else wants Malcolm Brogdon, you could maybe even walk away with another first round pick. So the fact that Deni Avdija turned into multiple picks, especially with the Portland Trail Blazers, 2029 pick being one of them, which I'm sorry, Portland isn't a really well-ran organization. So I'd like to bet that 29 pick could be a lot more valuable than we think. Next up, why did we bring Jonas Valanciunas? We needed a center, guys, especially with Alex Sarr. Alex Sarr is not a center. Alex Sarr, best case scenario, is a poor man's Jaren Jackson Jr., which means he's not going to be a strong rebounder. He's just going to be kind of like a 3-and-D guy, so you got to have a guy like Jonas Valanciunas, like Richaun Holmes, who's there. I like us bringing back Tristan Vukovic. Yeah, we cut him and then brought him on a 2-way just because I think they're like, look, bro, you're not worth that money. We're going to give that roster spot to somebody else. You have a 2-way. guys who are on the last legs, Johnny Davis, Pat Baldwin, they need to figure it out, or they could be guys who are shipped out or cut. Like Baldwin or Davis could get cut for Justin Champagnie. And they drafted Carlton Carrington, who I love. He's kind of got like, he's like a smaller, like Karis LeVert feel to him. I really like him. I think he's like herky jerky. He's fun. And we have Keyshawn George, who's a point forward who I think is really skilled. I think going into the season, Alex Sarr might come off the bench, and Kuzma, Corey Kispert, Bilal Coulibaly, and Jordan Poole will start, with Carlton Carrington, Malcolm Brogdon, and like Corey Kispert off the bench with Richaun Holmes backing up Jonas. The expectation, from my understanding, is Jonas will be eventually traded, because Jonas, like, this was the best situation for him. He'll establish himself. He'll be the rebounding presence that also help them improve their defense that was last in second chance points in all the NBA and 29th in points in the paint, points allowed in the paint. They got a rim protector. They got some good size. He's also like a really good like player for in terms of rebounding. So I think that's you know what I mean? So to me, like, when I look at this situation, I think the biggest thing is like Corey Kispert took a jump. He had 13.5 points, played 70 or more games for the third consecutive season. He also has 459 3-pointers, or the most in the first 3 seasons of a Wizards player in their history. So they were able to, I guess they lost Tyus Jones for nothing, but shout out them for not overpaying and staying steadfast and like believing that they didn't need to give him all that money. So Saddiq Bey is a 3-year, $20 million deal. Tristan Vukovic, a 2-way. Richaun Holmes got a 2-year, $25.9 million deal, but the second year is like fully unguaranteed, so don't expect him to stick around. Looking at this team, I think the next step is we got Kyle Kuzma's values at its highest. I think this is the year Kuzma probably gets traded, because we could walk away maybe with 2 first-round picks from a contending team, maybe more. I do believe that if, like, at some point, we'll do this in our protection video, I think the guys to expect to maybe be off this roster by the end of the season, Jonas, Kuzma, and Brogdon. I really do think by the end of the year, Richaun Holmes, Bilal Coulibaly, Corey Kispert, Jordan Poole will be like the guys in the starting lineup. Carlton Carrington, Jared Butler, Keyshawn George, Vuk, maybe Saddiq Bey's back and he's starting. But I think just like at that point, like, we'll have definitely shifted to more developing young guys and continuing the tank. I think in the beginning of the year, we're going to play a very vet-heavy lineup. I would not be surprised if, by the start of the season, it is Jonas, Kuz, Kispert, Brogdon, and Poole. And they run Poole at like shooting guard and Brogdon at point and Kispert at small forward and Kuz at power forward, and then have, off the bench, Coulibaly, or they start Coulibaly and they have Brogdon off the bench or Poole off the bench. But that's my whole thought process. It just makes too much sense for them to be like wanting to do it like that. I don't know. I just feel like they'd be wasting their time if they didn't do that. So I just think they're gonna play a lot of vets to start the year, and then by the end of the season, you're just gonna see a bunch of guys get traded by the deadline, and then them just go with their young dudes. But that's it. We'll do the prediction soon. This was recapping the offseason. We were just trying to really, our assets sucked, and now we have some assets. I mean, we walked away with 1, 2, 3 first-round picks. Who would have thought, ladies and gentlemen?